Frank, a young genius, goes to the 1964 New York World's Fair to compete in the inventors competition. Frank's prototype jetpack impresses Judge Nix, but when Frank admits the jetpack doesn't actually work well, Judge Nix quickly changes his mind. Until the jetpack really takes off, Nix won't let him participate in the competition. Frank goes completely heartbroken and can't stop thinking about all those occasions when his father told him it was a waste of time. Athena, Nix's assistant, approaches Frank, offers him a blue T-shaped lapel badge, and tells him to follow Nix and her discreetly. Since there is a large queue for a popular attraction where Nix and his friends are headed, Frank slips through and enters an empty boat. During the journey, a laser detects Frank's pin and activates a trapdoor that leads the boat into a dim passageway. Frank is excited to get inside the futuristic-looking wagon that arrives, but as soon as he does, all doors and windows are covered in metal blinds, and the wagon starts to shake wildly. Frank trips and falls on the ground. He can't rise to his feet until the wagon stops. Frank steps outside as the doors open and finds himself on a platform covered in thick fog. He is astonished to find Athena and Nix inside a flying car that is passing by. Giant robots suddenly appear in front of Frank as he attempts to pursue them and attempt to stop him. In an attempt to avoid the robotic arms, the kid runs around the platform and stumbles, falling on the platform below, breaking his jetpack. A helpful robot appears and takes the jetpack to fix it before returning it to Frank. Frank glides into the mist and finds himself in Tomorrowland, a futuristic city populated only with the most intelligent people. Frank lands close to Athena when he sees her and uses the opportunity to show Nix that he has fixed the jetpack. Nix ignores him, but Athena takes his hand and shows him how his life will be from now on. Casey, a teenage girl, sneaks into the NASA launch site in Florida in 2015 to sabotage all the equipment that will be used for the demolition, because she doesn't want her dad, a NASA engineer, to lose his job. While Casey is away from home, Athena is keeping an eye on everything from the shadows. When Casey comes back, Athena uses a tiny scanner to extract DNA from Casey's bike helmet and encodes it into her final Tomorrowland pin. Casey tries to sabotage the demolition once more in the evening, but this time, the police have been waiting for her, so she is taken into custody. After a few hours, the bail is paid, and Casey picks up her belongings to head back home. She discovers the pin among everything else, and as she touches it, a visual of a different place appears. When Casey touches the pin again, the same thing happens and the pin falls. The second time, Casey successfully grasps the pin and finds herself gazing at a massive city in the distance. However, as she begins to move towards the city, the pin slips, and she finds herself back in jail since her actions caused her to knock against objects and other people in the room. Casey uses a gum wrapper to pick up the pin in order to avoid further trouble. Eddie arrives at that time to take up Casey after posting her bail. He warns Casey for what she did on the way home, so she forces him to touch the pin and says it will explain everything. Eddie, however, experiences no reaction when he touches the pin. Casey is confused and touches the pin herself, appearing in the alternate reality, concluding that this only works for her. Eddie takes the pin away from Casey after becoming weary of her actions about it. When they return home, Casey waits for Eddie to fall asleep before stealing the pin from his nightstand. When Casey taps the pin in the center of a large field, she is finally able to see Tomorrowland. She learns that the pin has a timer that is running out and that no one can see her as she rides the train farther into the city. At the next station, Casey gets off the train and sees a number of important scientists getting onto a different kind of wagon. When the pin timer is about to expire, water suddenly appears all around her as she tries to follow them. Casey tries to push through the water and ignore it, but soon, Tomorrowland vanishes and Casey discovers herself in a swamp. When Casey looks online for the pin, she comes across an advertisement from a shop that will buy these pins from anyone. Casey follows the advertisement to the store. The strange store workers show an immense interest in it and confirm Casey's account of what she saw. The only way to enter the city of Tomorrowland, where the world's best minds have come to develop freely, free from the restrictions of law and greed, is through the pin. When Casey won't tell them where she got the pin or pay for it, the clerks press a button to seal the door and reveal a pair of plasma-shooting, futuristic weapons. Even though Casey tries to hide behind the products, the clerks manage to find her and demand information regarding some girl. The clerks are immediately frozen behind a force field by a grenade that bursts through the window. Athena arrives in the store, carrying a gun, and warns that the situation is a ticking time bomb. She then assists Casey in removing her hand out of the force field. Athena pulls Casey out the store just before the explosion happens. In response to Casey's inquiries while they are traveling, Athena admits that she was the one who handed Casey the pin. Before she can continue, she suddenly starts to malfunction, and Casey witnesses in horror how Athena fixes herself. Athena tries to follow Casey after she jumps out of the car out of fear, but as soon as she steps onto the road, a truck hits her. When the driver stops to check, Casey takes the opportunity to escape by stealing the truck. Athena, who is unaffected by the damage, immediately runs after the truck, breaks a window to steal the keys before locking the door. When Casey starts screaming, Athena gets her to stop by telling her that she's on her last pin and that they need to head to Tomorrowland right now because they built something that they shouldn't have. The girls are traveling to New York in search of an individual who can help them return to Tomorrowland. On the next morning, Athena rises and takes over the driving so Casey can sleep. She tells Casey that the person they will be meeting is Frank. Casey awakens hours later as she is abruptly tossed off the truck in front of a house. Casey has no choice but to approach the house, but as she does so, a guard dog attacks her. Casey stumbles and lands in the dirt, which causes her to realize the dog is a hologram and isn't leaving any footprints. Casey ignores the fake beast and knocks on the door, displaying her pin to the camera and requesting to be taken to Tomorrowland. An abrupt airburst knocks Casey back as an older Frank comes out of the house and demands to know where Athena is. When Frank learns she has left, he becomes angrier and tells Casey to leave because Tomorrowland is nothing more than a manipulative fiction. Frank then goes back to his home and locks the door. Even though it is raining, Casey won't leave and waits outside. She eventually becomes bored and starts to look for a strategy. Casey forces Frank to leave the house by lighting the plowing truck on fire. While Frank is outside putting out the fire, Casey enters the house and locks the door. Frank tries to enter the house, but Casey simply pushes him back with the same airburst. Casey starts exploring the house and discovers all kinds of strange creations. One machine plays a recording of little Frank attempting to make Athena laugh, and Athena telling him to give up. She discovers a number of displays showing the news in a different location, along with a timer that is gradually counting down. Frank returns to the house through a hidden door beneath the stairs, preparing to throw Casey out, but she convinces him to give her some answers. Frank says he was expelled from Tomorrowland for creating the timer that is connected to the screens. He asks Casey whether she'd be interested in knowing the day of her death, and she replies that she would, but she wouldn't believe it since they need to be able to control their destiny, and accepting her death would actually trigger it. This assertion causes the percentage to decrease on the screen, which greatly impresses Frank. When Dave and his agent's robots on the lookout for Casey arrive, their conversation is abruptly cut off. All of the metal blinds are immediately put into motion by Frank. When a robot manages to force his way inside, Frank uses a gadget to electrocute him. Casey assists Frank in his hand-to-hand battle by snatching a unique portal device and shoving the robot within. Frank leads Casey into the bathroom, where they both leap into the bathtub after Frank turns it into a capsule. Frank launches it just then, causing the capsule to fly out and land on the lake. Frank and Casey swim out of the water and into the woods, where Frank has hidden a bike that won't start. The two are startled by a light coming towards them, but it is only Athena who is there to pick them up. Frank and Athena start arguing as soon as the group gets in the truck. It turns out that all of the pins were intended to be destroyed, and Athena escaped with the final box of 12 pins so she could keep on recruiting. Frank, who is furious that more children have been drawn into this, informs Casey that Athena lied, saying that she doesn't shut down if you ask too many questions. Rather, it's just her ignoring you. Frank says that Athena creates false feelings to attract you and then leave you. Even though Athena is hurt, she ignores it for the time being in order to drive them to the local station, where Frank has set up his covert network that connects to his home. There is another capsule waiting for them, and once the humans are wearing the appropriate protection, they activate the system that teleports them away. When they get there, Casey realizes they are at the top of the Eiffel Tower. There is a guard standing close to the door, but fortunately, Frank has brought along a number of innovations, including a small instrument that enables Casey to effortlessly get rid of the guard with a quick tap. When they approach a room featuring an exhibition of well-known inventors, Frank explains that it was Eiffel, Verne, Tesla, and Edison who founded Tomorrowland by using the Eiffel Tower as a portal to another dimension. There's a hidden entrance, and after looking around, Frank finds it. The trio runs inside as more robots arrive to catch them. The Eiffel Tower splits in half and reveals a rocket. The robots are pushed away by the energy that the rocket releases during takeoff, and after briefly ascending, they descend once more while opening a portal to Tomorrowland. Frank makes Athena hide an explosive he brought with him inside her body when he saw authorities approaching. The first one to meet them is Nix, the city governor, who wants to arrest them. Frank and Athena soon change his opinion by informing him Casey was capable of lowering the percentage on the screens. Shocked, Nix brings the trio to the headquarters, where they hold Frank's hazardous creation, known as a tachyon machine. When they board the elevator, Casey sees holograms, which happen to be flashes of the future, generated by the machine that utilizes a particle that moves much faster than light. The group enters the middle of the machine, and Frank teaches Casey how to use it, allowing her to look at any point in humanity's history. Casey was startled to see herself in her house a few mornings ago, and Frank says the machine can also view forward. So Casey begins moving through history at a rapid pace until she eventually realizes the issue. The machine has projected that in 58 days, the world would end. Casey doesn't understand why they aren't alerting people on Earth, and Nix explains he doesn't care because it's the world that will perish, not Tomorrowland. And he won't let anyone in because they'll do to Tomorrowland what they did to Earth. When Casey rejects this, the screen briefly flickers with a glimpse of a better world. Frank tries to argue that this shows there is a chance, but Nix simply knocks out everyone. Later, when Frank awakens, Athena informs him that they will be deported once more. Casey is upset that the entire expedition has been for nothing, and when Frank attempts to console her, she snaps and claims they have been lying to her. As she starts to yell, she suddenly has a realization. Frank has been stealing the machine's signal to watch it at his house, and the signal has been floating around Earth, zapping these doomsday notions into people's heads. It is a self-fulfilling prophecy, but if Casey could turn it off with her optimism, it would allow people to once again see the light. The three are picked up by the Guardians so they can be expelled from Tomorrowland through a portal. Nix refuses to turn the machine off when Casey tries to tell him about her discovery. Frank comes to the realization that Nix is purposefully implanting the idea in people's minds. According to Nix, warnings of impending disaster have in the past been ignored by the government. As a result, he decided to warn individuals directly so they would change their actions. However, humanity chose to accept the end of the world as inevitable rather than strive towards a better future. Nix believes that humanity is to blame for this, rather than the machine. Frank shakes hands with Nix and pretended to accept it, but all he did was touch his wristband and restart the machine platform. While Frank faces Nix, who has turned on two robots to pursue the girls, Athena and Casey take care of the guards. When Athena tries to use the bomb Frank gave her, the robots catch her. While Athena fights the robots, she hands the bomb to Casey. As Casey races to the platform, it begins to shake crazily as Frank and Nix keep fighting over the bracelet. One of the robots is taken under Athena's control. Casey has managed to activate the device by viewing a flash of the future. Athena rushes to reach the platform and then goes to the control panel to shut the portal, destroying the second robot and leaving Frank and Nix outside. Casey discovers the bomb just as it is ready to explode. Athena must reopen the portal, and as soon as the men return inside, they toss the bomb into the portal. The portal shatters and collapses, trapping Nix underneath it. He spots a gun nearby with intention to kill Frank. Athena sees Frank dying, realizing that it's a glimpse of the future. She quickly moves towards Frank and places herself in between Frank and the gunshot. Casey grabs Nix's gun, and Frank tries to take Athena to a repair shop, but Athena tells him to stop since they don't have enough time. She then starts to play a series of recordings from their time together all those years ago, saying that she needs Frank to know something extremely important before she passes away. Little Frank once had feelings for Athena, but he was heartbroken to learn that she was a robot. Frank feels a sense of relief upon learning that Athena held affection for him all along and never lost faith in him. Now, it's Athena's turn to depart. She urges them to use the explosion to stop the machine since her body is going to self-destruct. Athena is lifted into the machine by Frank using his jetpack, and after they say their goodbyes, Athena is lowered within the machine. Nix is killed when the entire building explodes. Tomorrowland's energy goes off, and Frank struggles to maintain control of the jetpack while he was aiming for a safe landing in the river below. They start discussing what to do next, and together they start working on restarting the PIN program, and they create a number of robots similar to Athena. These robots use the portal to explore the globe and place pins for the smart people who might be able to assist them in creating a brighter future for the Earth. Thanks for watching.